We're back with Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Let's get cracking on this. We're right at the end, so if you haven't gotten caught up with the story, I recommend going back and starting at part 1. So, here we go. It was 1 o'clock on Sunday. For the last decade, Sunday lunch in Witchfinder Sergeant Shadwell's world had followed an invariable routine. He would sit at the rickety cigarette-burned table in his room, thumbing through an elderly copy of one of the Witchfinder Army Library's books on magic and demonology. The Necrotelomnicon, basically the Necronomicon, but because I couldn't use that word apparently, the Necrotelomnicon, or the Liber Pulverum Paginarum, whatever, or his old favorite, the Malleus Maleficarum, whatever. It's gibberish, okay? Then there would be a knock on the door, and Madame Tracy would call out, "Lunch, Mr. Shadwell." And Shadwell would mutter, "Shameless hussy," and wait 60 seconds to allow the shameless hussy to get back into her room. Then he'd open the door and pick up the plate of liver, which was usually carefully covered by another plate to keep it warm. And he'd take it in, and he'd eat it, taking moderate care not to spill any gravy on the pages he was reading. That was what always happened, except on that Sunday it didn't. For a start, he wasn't reading. He was just sitting. And when the knock came on the door, he got up immediately and opened it. He needn't have hurried. There was no plate. There was just Madame Tracy wearing a cameo brooch, and an unfamiliar shade of lipstick. She was also standing in the center of a perfume zone. "I, Jezebel." Madame Tracy's voice was bright and fast and brittle with uncertainty. "Hello, Mr. S. I was just thinking, after all we've been through in the last 2 days, it seems silly for me to leave a plate out for you. So I've set a place for you. Come on." The train's gonna come right by my house, so I'm gonna pause this while it's screaming, and then we'll get back to this. Alright. Mr. S. Shadwell followed warily. He had had another dream last night. He didn't remember it properly, just one phrase that still echoed in his head and disturbed him. The dream had vanished into a haze, like the events of the previous night. It was this: "Nothing wrong with witch-finding. I'd like to be a witch-finder. It's just, well, you've got to take it in turns. Today we'll go out witch-finding, and tomorrow we could hide, and it'd be the witch's turn to find us." For the second time in 24 hours, for the second time in his life, he entered Madame Tracy's room. "Sit down there," she told him, pointing to an armchair. It had an antimacassar on the headrest. I know I'm saying that right. Antimacassar. I know I'm saying it wrong. Tell me in the comments how to say it. Spell it out for me. A plumped up pillow on the seat and a small footstool. He sat down. She placed a tray on his lap and watched him eat, and removed his plate when he had finished. Then she opened a bottle of Guinness, poured it into a glass, and gave it to him. Then sipped her tea while he slurped his stout. When she put her cup down, it tinkled nervously in the saucer. I've got a tiny bit put away," she said, apropos of nothing. "And And, sometimes I think it would be a nice thing to get a little bungalow in the country somewhere, move out of London. I'd call it the Laurels or Dunroman or Shangri-La, suggested Shadwell, and for the life of him could not think of why. Exactly, Mr. S. Exactly, Shangri-La. She smiled at him. Are you comfy, love? Shadwell realized with dawning horror that he was comfortable. Horribly, terrifyingly comfortable. He said warily. He had never been so comfortable. Madame Tracy opened another bottle of Guinness and placed it in front of him. Only trouble with getting a bungalow called, what was your clever idea, Mr. S? Shangri-La. Shangri-La, exactly. Is that it's not right for one, is it? I mean, two people. They say two can live as cheaply as one. Or 518, thought Shadwell, remembering the massed ranks of the Witchfinder army. She giggled. Just wonder where I could find someone to settle down with. Shadwell realized that she was talking about him. He wasn't sure about this. He had a distinct feeling that leaving Witchfinder Private Pulsifer with the young lady in Tadfield had been a bad move as far as the Witchfinder Army Book of Rules and Regulations was concerned, and this seemed even more dangerous. Still, at his age, when you're getting too old to go crawling about in the long grass when the chill morning dew gets in your bones, and tomorrow we can hide and it'd be the witch's turn to find us. Madame Tracy opened another bottle of Guinness and giggled. Oh, Mr. S., she said, you'll be thinking I'm trying to get you tiddly. He gruntled. There was a formality that had to be observed in all this. Witchfinder Sergeant Shadwell took a long, deep drink of Guinness, then he popped a question. Madame Tracy giggled. Honestly, you old silly, she said, and she blushed a deep red. How many do you think? He popped it again. 2, said Madame Tracy. Ah, well, that's all right then, said Witchfinder Sergeant Shadwell, retired. Oh, because he's always asking people how many nipples they have. Okay, I had to think about that. I was like, what? Okay, got it. Okay. It was Sunday afternoon. High over England, a 747 droned westwards. In the first-class cabin, a boy called Warlock put down his comic and stared out of the window. It'd been a very strange couple of days. He still wasn't certain why his father had been called to the Middle East. He was pretty sure that his father didn't know either. It was probably something cultural. All that had happened was a lot of funny-looking guys with towels on their head and very bad teeth had shown them around some old ruins. As ruins went, Warlock had seen better. And then one of the old guys had said to him, wasn't there anything he wanted to do? And Warlock had said he'd like to leave. And they looked very unhappy about that. And now he was going back to the States. There had been some sort of problem with the tickets or flights or airport destination boards or something. It was weird. He was pretty sure his father had meant to go back to England. Warlock liked England. It was a nice country to be an American in. The plane was at that point passing right above the lower Tadfield bedroom of Greasy Johnson, who was aimlessly leafing through a photography magazine that he'd bought merely because it had a rather good picture of a tropical fish on the cover. A few pages below Greasy's listless finger was a spread on American football and how it was really catching on in Europe, which was odd because when the magazine had been printed, those pages had been about photography and desert conditions. It was about to change his life. And Warlock flew on to America. He deserved something, after all. You never forget the first friends you've ever had, and even if you were all a few hours old at the time, and the power that was controlling the fate of all mankind at that precise time was thinking, well, he's going to America, isn't he? Don't see how you could have anything better than going to America. They've got 39 flavors of ice cream there, maybe even more. There were a million exciting things a boy and his dog could be doing on a Sunday afternoon. Adam could think of 400 or 500 of them without even trying. Thrilling things, stirring things, planets to be conquered, lions to be tamed, lost South American worlds teeming with dinosaurs to be discovered and befriended. He sat in the garden and scratched in the dirt with a pebble, looking despondent. His father had found Adam asleep on his return from the airbase, sleeping, to all intents and purposes, as if he had been in bed all evening, even snoring once in a while. For verisimilitude, sorry. At breakfast the next morning, however, it was made clear that this had not been enough. Mr. Young disliked gallivanting about of a Saturday evening on a wild goose chase, and if by some unimaginable fluke Adam was not responsible for the night's disturbances, whatever they had been, since nobody had seemed very clear on the details, only that there had been disturbances of some sort, then he was undoubtedly guilty of something. This was Mr. Young's attitude, and it had served him well for the last 11 years. Adam sat dispiritedly in the garden. The August sun hung high in an August blue in the cloudless sky, and behind the hedge a thrush sang, but it seemed to Adam that this was simply making it all much worse. The dog sat at Adam's feet. He had tried to help chiefly by exhuming a bone he had buried for 4 days earlier and dragging it to Adam's feet, but all Adam had done was stare at it gloomily, and eventually Dog had taken it away and inhumed it once more. He had done all he could. Adam turned, 3 faces stared over the garden fence. Hi, said Adam, disconsolately. I need to broaden my vocabulary, apparently. I'm getting there, guys. There's a circus come to Norton, said Pepper. Wensley was down there, and he saw them. They're all just setting up. They've got tents and elephants and jugglers and practically wild animals and stuff and everything, said Wensleydale. We thought maybe we'd all go down there and watch them setting up, said Brian. For an instant, Adam's mind swam with visions of circuses. Circuses were boring once they were set up. You could see better stuff on television any day. But the setting up, of course they'd all go down there, and they'd help them put up the tents and watch the elephants, and the circus people would be so impressed with Adam's natural rapport with animals, such that night, Adam and the dog, the world's most famous performing mongrel, would lead the elephants into the circus ring, and it was no good. He shook his head sadly. Can't go anywhere, he said. They said so. There was a pause. Adam, said Pepper, a trifle uneasily, what did happen last night? Adam shrugged. Just stuff. It doesn't matter, he said. It's always the same. All you do is try to help, and people would think you'd murdered someone or something. There was another pause while the them stared at their fallen leader. When do you think they'll let you out then? Asked Pepper. Not for years and years and years and years and years, and I'll be an old man by the time they let me out, said Adam. How about tomorrow? asked Wensleydale. Adam brightened. Oh, tomorrow will be all right, he pronounced. They'll have forgotten about it by then. You'll see. They always do. He looked up at them, a scruffy Napoleon with his laces trailing exiled to a rose-trestled elbow. You all go, he told them with a brief, hollow laugh. Don't you worry about me. I'll be all right. I'll see you tomorrow. The them hesitated. Loyalty was a great thing, but no lieutenant should be forced to choose between their leader and a circus with elephants. They left. The sun continued to shine. The thrush continued to sing. Dog gave up on his master and began to stalk a butterfly in the grass by the garden hedge. This was a serious, solid, impassable hedge of thick and well-trimmed privet, and Adam knew it of old. Beyond it stretched open fields and wonderful muddy ditches and unripe fruit, and irate but slow-foot owners of fruit trees and circuses and streams to dam and walls and trees just made for climbing. But there was no way through the hedge. Adam looked thoughtfully. Dog, said Adam sternly, get away from that hedge. Because if you went through it, then I'd have to chase you to catch you, and I'd have to go out of the garden, and I'm not allowed to do that. But I'd have to, if you went and ran away. The dog jumped up and down excitedly and stayed where he was. Adam looked around carefully, then even more carefully he looked up and down and then inside, and now there was a large hole in the hedge, large enough for a dog to run through and for a boy to squeeze through after him. And it was a hole that had always been there. Adam winked at the dog. Dog ran through the hole in the hedge and shouting clearly, loudly, and distinctly, Dog, you bad dog! Stop, come back here! Adam squeezed through after him. Something told him that something was coming to an end, not the world exactly, just the summer. There would be other summers, but there would never be one like this ever again. Better make the most of it then. He stopped halfway across the field. Someone was burning something. He looked at the plume of white smoke above the chimney of Jasmine Cottage, and he paused and he listened. Adam could hear things that other people might miss. He could hear laughter. It wasn't a witch's cackle. It was the low and earthy guffaw of someone who knew a great deal more than could possibly be good for them. The white smoke writhed and curled above the cottage chimney. For a fraction of an instant, Adam saw outlined in the smoke a handsome female face, a face that hadn't been seen on earth for over 300 years. Agnes Nutter winked at him. The light summer breeze dispersed the smoke, and the face and the laughter were gone. Adam grinned and began to run once more. In a meadow, a short distance away, across a stream, the boy caught up with the wet and muddy dog. Bad dog, said Adam, scratching Dog behind the ears. Dog yapped ecstatically. Adam looked up. Above him hung an old apple tree, gnarled and heavy. It might have been there since the dawn of time. Its boughs were bent with the weight of apples, small and green and unripe. With the speed of a striking cobra, the boy was up the tree. He returned to the ground seconds later with his pockets bulging, munching noisily on a tart and perfect apple. Hey, you, boy, came a gruff voice from behind him. You're that Adam Young. I can see you. I'll tell your father about you. You see if I don't. Parental retribution was now a certainty, thought Adam, as he bolted his dog by his side, his pockets stuffed with stolen fruit. It always was, but it wouldn't be till this evening, and this evening was a long way off. He threw the apple core back in the general direction of his pursuer, and he reached into a pocket for another. He couldn't see why people made such a fuss about people eating their silly old fruit anyway. But life would be a lot less fun if they didn't. And there never was an apple, in Adam's opinion, that wasn't worth the trouble you got into for eating it. If you want to imagine the future, imagine a boy and his dog and his friends and a summer that never ends. And if you want to imagine the future, imagine a boot, imagine a sneaker, laces trailing, kicking a pebble, imagine a stick to poke at interesting things and throw for a dog that may or may not decide to retrieve it. Imagine a tuneless whistle pounding some luckless popular song into insensibility. Imagine a figure, half angel, half devil, all human, slouching hopefully toward Tadfield forever. So, after this, I'm just seeing author's notes. I think we're at the end of the story, guys. I'm a bit sad. Yeah, it's just author notes. Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, which you can look that up later. I'm not reading the author notes. Okay, that's not what I'm here for. You guys wouldn't listen to it anyway. I'm sad. It's the end. But that means that we have another book on the way, right? I'm thinking I'm going, because we already did the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So, for our next book, I think we should do The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Kind of get back into that, because you know me, British comedy. I love it. I love it. Okay, so, yeah, I think that will be the plan. That will do. But, yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one when I read again. Namaste. I love you guys. Thanks for chilling with me for this book.